Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, episode 30 of Screenwriting Step by Step, in which I am walking you through my process of writing a pilot TV script from rough idea all the way to finished script. It's a long-term project. I'm doing it in little slices every weekday afternoon when I can. Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, during which you can ask me almost anything as I work. I will answer it towards the end of the episode if I can. If for some reason you have a life and you cannot watch this live and ask your questions, you can go to writingforscreens.com and look for the Contact Me button on damn near every page. If you use it, you can contact me. The other way to contact me is right here in the comments. If you write a comment, it goes flying through the internet and reaches me. And then I can either answer it right there in the comments or here if it's something that I think would be a good thing to discuss with everybody. So let us get right to the Untitled Podcasting Killer Project, which we have gotten now 30 episodes working on the outline. And as a result, I am getting close to being done with the outline in some ways. I've got my rough idea of the shape of the outline, the pilot episode's major events, the big sections of it, what I like to call the major moves. Hello, Wolf Powers, you're here. I am glad to see you. And anyone else who comes on live, please feel free to ask me almost anything. So today, what I worked on while prepping for this was the last section, which I know roughly what's going to happen. I know that in the final moments of the episode, we are going to suddenly have our heroes confronted by the serial killer who is not what they expected. And that's going to turn around the entire story. That is why I have this. I did new work in the outline. What I did was I started asking questions. For instance, what's his job? What's his life? Who is he? All I knew was that he should be an old man because his crimes were committed a long time ago. They are cold case. And I am, oh, look at this. Someone else is here. 99th Precinct. Hello. With, I believe, Littlefinger from Game of Thrones as a photo. Anyway, who is this guy? Elmore Deakins, the killer. I want him to be unexpectedly likable because he is going to be a major character in the story. One of my models for this, if you haven't seen it, it's a terrific movie, Insomnia. Let me see if I've got that here somewhere. Nope, don't know where it went. The model that I have here is Insomnia. Oh, there it is. The movie Insomnia, directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Hilary Seitz, based on, I believe, a Scandinavian thriller about a cop who is hunting a murderer, and the murderer begins to communicate with the cop, and in doing so, the cop is vulnerable and cannot. He's done something wrong in his earlier in his life, and therefore can't necessarily just confront the killer as he would. There comes a mental game between the killer and the cop. It's a terrific story. We're going to do something sort of like that here. I believe this is important. Never be afraid to steal a good idea and make it your own. You don't steal it like you just do what they did exactly. But the rough concept here of a relationship between a killer and the people hunting him, and a lot of mind games being played between them, That's what I'm stealing. When I say steal, what I mean is use, borrow. Every artist does it. Every work of art is, in fact, a conglomeration of a lot of things, many of which are the things that you as an artist like, the things that influenced you, the things that you think are cool. You absorb them and you tend to do stuff like them, but you very often do them in a new way, in your way. That's what makes art. The other things are your observation of the world, things that you may not have experienced, but also your own experiences come into it. And then there's the requirements of the business. All of that jumbled together makes a script, makes a work of art of any kind. So what I got here is I started to work on who is this guy? Sorry, lost my place. There. And I thought about his life and I just started to work on it. The main thing about this man is he is retired from serial killing. That's the surprise. He basically calls them and says, hey, I stopped doing this 30 years ago. I'm trying to be a good person. I'm trying to live my life in a good way. I don't believe he's saying just like, forget it. But I think he's the main thing he's trying to reach out and say is, I did not do this murder. So I came up with two possible, I wanted something that he was doing to be gentle, something sweet and gentle, not actually like making up for it. It's not like he's helping, he's like running a homeless shelter or something. I wanted it to be some form of life which suggests that he has changed, but is not necessarily directly making up for what he did. So I came up with two things that I thought were sort of gentle, handcrafted, personal, life-affirming. And I thought florist, just because the whole idea of growing, nurturing nature, beauty. But I think I'm leaning towards artisanal soap maker, which is just a little quirkier, a little less on the nose. Plus, because our killer started out as a poisoner, there's a sort of sense that he took his skills and sort of just shifted them a little bit off, and now he's using those same murderous skills to make fancy soaps. So I left this as a choice, but the truth is, I think I've pretty much decided that he is a soap maker, because florist just feels too on the nose. It feels too easy. Sometimes you don't want to just do the easiest cliche, and this feels less cliched, and that's why I'm choosing it. By the way, I started putting stuff in green in order to remind me of what I did today so that I can show it to you, because I'm starting to try and get some work done. I don't want this to drag on forever. I don't want this to be 1,000 episodes. So what I'm doing is I am just putting my new work in green so that you can see that I can go back to it. I can scan and go, oh, look, I need to tell you that I did this. Take out the question because I've answered it. Now, the other thing is I started to get a picture of what he's like. Now, I don't know if that's spelled right, but now and then, I don't particularly believe it is a good idea to write for a specific actor, because the odds are you will not get that actor. And so if you make it too specifically them, any other actor reads it, goes, well, this part isn't for me. It's they want this guy. But I do think I tried to get a physical description of a person who's sort of handcrafty. He could be in a commercial for something which shows somebody working on a farm. And so in an ideal world, Sam Elliott could play it. I don't advise ever in your script naming a person to be a character. It's just irritating. It's irritating to every actor who's not that person. So the main thing is when he calls, he has to tell them that he has stopped murdering. And this is a lie. The revelation of that lie will not come for several episodes, probably around the halfway point of our series. But in this first contact, he is going to communicate, I'm different. I gave it up. I did a bad thing, but I no longer am that person. Now, there will obviously be tension over whether or not this is true and whether or not we should even forgive him for what he has done. So he's going to have to tell a story about when he stopped, why he stopped. What is this story? I don't know yet. I do know, last time we talked, I was thinking about the question of the sociopath. The Sociopath Test is a book about the creation of the test in which sociopath was defined as a psychiatric concept. It is a person with no empathy, no ability to feel love, or to feel what other people, to put themselves in other people's shoes. I initially had said, I don't think I want to do that. I don't want this person to be that way because I did not want to get into the question of whether people are bad to the bone, whether someone is just, evil. But as I was listening to an episode of This American Life, a magnificent radio show for those of you who want to learn about the world and get in-depth storytelling, learn about characters and lives that will inform your writing. This American Life, I'm actually gonna, I don't know, you guys must know about that, but just in case you don't, This American Life. Oh, wait, there we go. Sorry about that. This American Life podcast radio hour. All right. So, if you do not know about this, I strongly recommend it as something that is full of insight into life, into this American life. If you're ever looking for some way to learn about the world in which your characters who are not you might live, I just strongly recommend this. Anyway, so I was listening to an episode about the sociopath test, the psychopath test, sorry, and they were talking about how the people who invented the test, this psychological test, which rather accurately can predict whether or not someone will commit crimes, they themselves were horrified that it was being used as a determinant for how we would treat people. And bravo for them. Good for them. You really can't do that. The whole Minority Report question. But one of the things that it brought to mind was the issue of the IQ test. Another podcast, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about a woman who joined Mensa and had very hostile things to say about it, but also rather affectionate. The IQ test, like the psychopath test, was not necessarily meant to define a person forever. The test shows where they are at that moment. And that's a cool and interesting thing to think about. Because if our character is at times a monster, that does not mean they always are. Or at least that's going to be their argument, his argument, Deacon's. So what I want to have him do, oops, I typed into the text instead. All right, what I want to do is we start with the understanding that this character is unexpectedly reasonable, sympathetic, like them. And then during the course of the story, we are going to discover he is in fact a monster. He is someone who likes to kill. But right now we're just getting the retired killer. And then by the end, our heroes have to deal with the monster. So that's what I've come to for the moment on the story of who he is. what this means is that in this first call, he has to communicate, I did not kill George. That is the key to this call. That everyone is going to assume for the first hour of this series that George was murdered by the serial killer he was planning to uncover, to identify. And now that guy is calling and saying, it wasn't me, which opens up a world of fear and fun puzzles. Because the question is then, who done it? Because we have to know who to be afraid of and who to catch. I wonder if this is making sense to anyone. It made sense to me when I wrote it. Matthew says, hi, hello. All right, so when he tells them, I didn't do it, which is here. Whoa, way back here. The first thing that happens when he calls is he says, hey, I'm the killer. I didn't do it. That is the most important message. That is the center of this call. This dramatic action is, I am not the killer. So he's not threatening them or anything. He's simply saying like, hey, please, I've been framed. The thing is, somebody calls me and says, hey, I'm a serial killer and I didn't do it. They're not going to necessarily believe him. So they're skeptical. And he has to unexpectedly prove that he's the killer. I actually believe this is going to make him likable, because the guys, it's like if you imagine you're like in a haunted house and the monster comes towards you and you say, hey, watch out, that step is loose. And he's like, oh, sorry. And he has to go around. All of a sudden, this person who we were assuming was a certain kind of thing is revealing himself to be confused and baffled because we're saying, I don't believe in you. So he has to, in order to convince them of his innocence regarding this murder, he has to actually prove that he is honestly the killer, because they need to believe that he's telling the truth and that he knows what he's talking about. So he did not prepare for this. I think that's going to be a likable turn, that even the bad guy comes into these things unexpectedly. We've got Michael Goncharov. Hello, good vibes to you too. So we're taking a process of dramatic actions. They are hunting a killer. Big twist, the killer calls. Bigger twist, the killer says, I'm calling because I'm innocent. I've been framed. Little twist is that they go, how do we know you're really you? How do we know that we can trust you, what you say? And that puts them in an unexpectedly a bonding scene, a scene in which they are trying to communicate. This is actually important. One of the biggest ways that you can make characters likable and that you can make stories powerful is by showing people trying to communicate. It's just amazing how much we get involved when we watch people trying to communicate when there is an obstacle. It's just like a little trick, a screenwriting tip. People needing to communicate and making the effort to communicate against odds is a powerful way to make people likable and to make a story involving to the audience. I'm going to take a quick moment here to read some of these comments. A serial killer would want to take credit for the murder he didn't commit for the attention. Not necessarily. In fact, this has happened with other killers who had copycats. They don't want to. They want the true credit. But whether or not they would, this is another important one. When I go important, I come out of the page. Every character is unique. Every person is unique. Every story is unique, and therefore, to say baseball players would do this or serial killers would do this, many would. Ours may not. That may actually mean that we are going to think of him differently. It tends to be what gives characters depth and humanity in a story, is that they don't go strictly to formula. The killer makes, so is he made of the fat of the victims? No, I'm going to make a point of that. A, Fight Club. B, creepiness. You know, I'm not going to say never. Never say never. It is possible that later we will find he does indeed use the fat of his victims, but he's going to say he doesn't. Remember, he's trying to pretend to not be a serial killer anymore. Okay. Hello from England, from Beverly. 234 Pika Pika says, suggestion, name of his soap brand is Innocence. You can wash your hands with it. Absolutely a fascinating idea. I will, I have yet to figure out how I can copy and paste out of this, but I will just make a note here. Sweet ideas. We'll see if they survive the process of writing, but always grab ideas when you get them. To get back, one of the things, it's really useful when you're writing, you try and tell yourself the story. That's what I've been doing when I'm going through this. I'm trying to go through each step of this story, this section of the story. And so I've got to the point where he is surprised. He's like, "What? Wait! I have to prove I am not. I have to prove he is real. Actually, I'm going to move this. He has to prove he's real after we have met him. In other words." This is just a minor mechanical thing, but as you go through the story, Deakins calls Madeline to say, "I didn't do it." Right there is when I want to get to, we meet him. We know who he is. This is when we learn about him. And then they don't believe him, and he has to prepare his proof. And so my question would be, this makes him unexpectedly honest and vulnerable. And this is something that I really want to emphasize. What we're doing here is we are creating a dramatic conclusion to the pilot. The setup of the pilot has been Crazy George claimed to have evidence uncovering a serial killer, and he got murdered apparently by that serial killer to prevent this identification. Reveal. Lots of little reveals along the way about how crazy it was that George did this and how he's dragged other people into his dangerous mess of infuriating a serial killer. Then we get the unexpected turn. Xena comes, she discovers there was no evidence. He was just bluffing. And then the final turn of the episode is the serial killer himself contacts them. He says, "I didn't do it." They say, "How do we know you're you?" He convinces them. This, I do not know yet how they do it. So, the one thing I do know is that when he says, "I didn't do it," he has an alibi. But he cannot tell them the alibi, because telling them the alibi would expose his new life, his undercover hideout, I am not a serial killer life. So he is basically saying, I'm in trouble. I know that George was going to reveal my identity. And in doing that, he's also revealing that he's been tracking them, which only makes sense. You've got a guy who is hunting a serial killer. That serial killer will be interested in the progress they're making. he is revealing that he has been following the podcasts and part of the online group. In fact, that may be how he gets them to trust him. Maybe he just says, okay. So that's a possibility. Anyway, he's being vulnerable. He's opening himself up to them. This is just not what you would expect. That the guy you fear is saying, "Help me! I am in trouble, and only you can help." But the question is, what help is he asking for? The police are on the case, and what he's asking for is to say, "Please, get rid of that evidence George had. Don't turn my identification over to the police." Or saying at least, like, tell me what it was, because I want to find out if he really was on to me. And that leads directly to them saying, actually, there is no evidence. This George was bluffing. He was actually trying to get your attention, which apparently he did. So at this point, everyone is completely relieved. And this is, as I say, this is going to be a series of steps or realizations. That there's a lot of mental steps that are going to take place here. And what it's going to come to is them saying, "You're off the hook." And I think they actually hang up, have a separate call, or at some point, someone realizes, well, he just gave us new evidence. In other words, in communicating with us, he has opened up all this new information. We know he's alive. We know he's been on the group. All this stuff that could help us catch him. And I like the idea that having communicated, having connected, having been unexpectedly kind, they get off the phone and both sides suddenly realize, oh crap, that beautiful moment we just had means he's got to come after us and we've got to come after him. He has to come after us now, and therefore we have to go after him. That is the point. That is the message. That is what is going to end the pilot. So that's what I got to. I sort of broke down the emotional and mental steps of this last set of confrontations. So that's where I got to up to now. I'm going to, I think, call it a day unless anybody has any questions, because my brain is fried trying to catch up and explain all of that. All right. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a minute here to consider if you have any questions. If not, tomorrow I will plunge in again. I think we're getting close to the point where I sort of know all of the major moves. I know what the shape of the pilot is, and now I can start getting more granular, making sure I've answered all the questions, little things like where someone lives or what their job is, if that's going to be part of the story. And so let's see. How about the killer also has a germ phobia obsession? Well, definitely he would have an obsession with cleaning up after himself. That's clear. That's sort of part of why I like the idea of him being in the soap business more than the flower business. And a quick question from Kirby. What's the best way to end a pilot? The way I just did. The best way to end a pilot is essentially, a pilot is all about laying out the elements that are going to be central to the show, to the series as a whole, introducing us to at least, you don't have to introduce every single main character. There may be people who don't show up for a whole season if you're running for a while, but you're introducing the main characters and the main conflict. In this case, we are introducing the serial killer, the thing that George did that brought all these people together, the team around George who are finding themselves provoked to action because of the murder. So we're introducing all of those players, plus the cops and a couple others, and especially Madeline and Norman, who we're going to really be following most. So we're setting up all of those people, and then at the end of a pilot, you want to do something that is unexpected, that is a new element, a part that you didn't see coming. In Breaking Bad, and this is sort of time fractured, but basically you're seeing a guy who has a lot of issues, but has a sad little life at the moment, and he finds he's got cancer and he wants to provide for his family, and he doesn't have a way to get money, but he's a brilliant chemist, and he has an entree into the world of drugs because of his brother-in-law, and then because of his student. All of those things come up together, but by the end of the pilot, what you discover is it is not as easy as it looked. It's not just cooking the meth. There's dangerous criminals and all sorts of other elements that are going to make this not as easy as it looked. So that's in Mad Men. We are meeting all these people in Don Draper's life. Don is a character with some somewhat mysterious contradictions, but we don't know that much about him. We know that he's really smart and that he is on sort of the cutting edge, and he's living this sort of life of a single man in the city. And at the end of the pilot, spoiler alert, by the way, but these are things you should watch anyway, and not terrible stories. He goes home to his suburban wife and children. He's living a double life. That is the central core of the entire series. Just like the difficulty, the danger that Walter White has brought himself into in his attempt to make money and gain security for his family is going to be the struggle that is going to carry Lee through the entire series. In ours, what we're going to do is we're setting up these people who think they're trying to solve a crime, and what they're discovering is they are all of a sudden committed. That's really what the end of the pilot is. It's serious, it's real, because there's always some doubt in the middle of our show of is this real? Is there even a killer out there? Blah blah blah. And the end is when you say we are already in it. That's really the finale. Hold on, let me write this down. We are already in over our heads. The only way out now is catch this killer or whoever killed George. And whoever killed George. This is what we have to come to, is we are already in over our heads. That's the end of this pilot. And I believe almost every good pilot ends with an upping of the stakes or a reveal of the complexities that it appeared were at least somewhat being handled. And then at the end of the pilot, boom, it's not as easy as it looks. Recommendations on good pilots to study. There are so many, but I have to say, Mr. Robot, a phenomenal pilot, phenomenal series, demanding, brilliant, but here, should I be typing this? Yes, I believe I should be writing this down. Hold Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Deadwood, Mr. Robot, Homeland, The Boys, and also The Good Life. Okay. This is a bunch of really good pilots. Oops, sorry. There we go. Here you go. I'm going to leave this up for a minute so that you can copy it down or screenshot it or snap it. Every one of these pilots is pretty brilliant. And there are many, many, many more. Go on the web. On the web. I sound like I'm like 100 years old, don't I? Search for TV pilots PDF. Look for pilots that have cover pages. If it doesn't have a cover page, it's very likely a transcript, not an actual pilot. Even better if it's got dates on the cover page. Another sign that you've got an actual pilot script and not somebody typing what they saw on the screen. But the main thing, this is just super important. When you read a script of any kind, if it is identical to the finished product, it means you're not reading a real script. It means you're not reading a script that they worked from. There has never been a script in history which is identical to the finished film or show. So if you read one of those, that means you're reading a transcript. Someone has typed what they watched, and that's useless. A script will always be, in some ways, different. I'll put these back up for you in case you missed it. Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Deadwood, Mr. Robot, Homeland, The Boys, and just to give you a half hour, The Good Life is phenomenal. And there's so many good shows now. I would say at the moment, that's just a handful, but truly, there's so many good shows and so many good pilots. Check out whatever you can find on the web, read it, and that's a thought. Are there any great shows that involve a revenge plot? Well, certainly, but I do not offhand know of one, although kind of. Bloodline on Netflix. It was a 3 seasons Bloodline. The end is a little rushed, but that is a superb show about a guy coming back to his troubled family. And so that's just, it's a good pilot. It's a great show. My favorite pilot, The Vampire, 77, never got a thing. I've never heard of that one, The Vampire. 6 Feet Under is another great pilot. Absolutely true. Phenomenal. Should characters already change a bit during the pilot? That's an interesting question. By the way, Kirby says, thanks, you're welcome. Should they change a bit? Yeah, probably. Boardwalk Empire is another really good pilot. Do they change it? Yes, there's going to be some change. Things are going to be stirred up in the pilot. I cannot think of a pilot offhand where things don't change in the pilot, where nothing is upset and disturbed and some element has started a drama. So I would say it's not always that they change substantially. Very often we learn more about them. We see more sides to them as the pilot goes on, which we're doing very much so. Norman starts out as sort of a rumpled, nasty critic, and he turns out to be rather a sweet lover in our story. Madeline seems like a little bit of a repressed do-gooder and starts to loosen up and ends up kind of leading the group. So the answer is, should characters already change a bit during the pilot? Yeah. In a sense, if you think about dramatic action as things changing, everything constantly is changing. They're just little changes. And Wolf is telling us about the vampire. That sounds great. It actually may, I don't know, but it may have, looking at the date, the 70s, it's late 70s, it may be related to The Night Stalker, which was it's a kicky little show. Not great, but at the time it was fun. Anyway, that may have either provoked the vampire or actually been related. Well, we've rattled on for 40 minutes here, so I believe I am going to stop now. I want to say thank you. I want to see you tomorrow, and I want to say go write something.